we have today Eleanor McEvoy joining us. Now, Eleanor is Entrepreneurship Ambassador for Northern Ireland, Energy Entrepreneur, and RTE Dragoness. So she calls herself a serial entrepreneur. Eleanor is the CEO of Next Gen Power, a green energy business focused on bringing renewable electricity to the masses through affordable solar panel and battery technology. A two-time EY Entrepreneur of the Year finalist, Eleanor broke new ground by becoming the first private supplier of electricity in Northern Ireland when she founded Budget Energy. She's also the ambassador for entrepreneurship in Northern Ireland. We're so pleased that she was able to join us for this event today. Now, during her time as a Dragoness on 2 seasons of RTE's Dragon's Den, Eleanor actually made substantial investments in a number of young businesses. And before that, Eleanor successfully built and sold 2 companies, Pembroke Distributors and Phone Card Warehouse. So maybe your business is something that Eleanor could invest in the future. No pressure, of course, Eleanor. I didn't really say that. But let's welcome Eleanor McEvoy to the So She Did event. Eleanor, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
You want to just put your camera on?
Okay.
Switched on.
Are you switched on?
Yes, you are. There you are. So over to you, Eleanor. Have you enjoyed what you've been hearing so far?
Yes, it's been amazing. I remember starting out in those journeys many years ago. And I'm actually quite tickled that we've got so many females here today, because certainly when I started out, when I was in my 20s, I used to go into meetings and I'd invariably have a male employee with me. And everybody in the room would direct the questions to the male employee. But guess what, girls? It turned out to be an advantage because you were always underestimated. So there's always a benefit out of everything. I want to be very mindful of talking in general terms about my experience, because I'm conscious of people who are sitting thinking about, what does it take to come up with a good idea? What's important when you sit down with your pen and your piece of paper? What is this idea? What do I need to do next? So the first thing I'm going to say is, an idea doesn't have to be new. You just have to take an idea that's out there and there's a need for it, whether it's a product or a service, and you can do it better. My definition of what an entrepreneur is somebody who takes an idea and turns it into a business. I have never done anything that was unique. I mean, when I started out back with Pembroke Distributors many years ago, that was vending machines. What did I do different? I competed with the likes of Cadbury's and Coca-Cola and Mars, and they all had branded machines. I started out using their machines and buying their products. And then as I built up my revenue reserves, I then bought my own machines, and I called myself the one-stop shop for vending. So I actually went into competition with them. So it's not really about being new. Sometimes a lot of people talk to me and say, but I haven't got any new ideas. It's not new ideas. It's taking ideas and doing them better. Now let's look at the environment we're currently in. And talking about the environment, that is going to be the #1 priority going forward. So where are the opportunities in how we bring new ideas to people and how they change how they live? I mean, Next Gen Power that I've recently got involved with, what we want to do is we want every householder to put solar panels on their roof and a battery inside the house, which stores the electricity and then feeds it back out on demand. And that's the simple principle. But the really interesting thing about these technologies right now is they are now more affordable than long-term paying for electricity in the normal way. I'm now going to talk about mentors. I had this conversation actually earlier this morning with Chris. I never put value on mentors until I was almost forced into the situation. And what happened was, in Phone Card Warehouse, which was a business, by the way, that sold top-up codes for mobile phones. My God, it makes me sound like a dinosaur. And that business had less than 10 employees and turned over 50 million net of VAT a year. And when I look back on that, to have so few employees with such a big turnover, I never recreated it again. But what actually happened was I took a funder on board, and the funder insisted that I used one of the big accountancy firms to do my audit. I thought this was a waste of money. As a result of it, I interviewed all the accountancy firms, including Ernst & Young, and Ernst & Young invited me in as a finalist in the Entrepreneur of the Year. I didn't want to do it, but my investor insisted on it. Now, that's back in 2004. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because for the first time in my life, I was surrounded people, and in the normal world, everybody thinks are insane, but actually we were all in the same place in our different businesses. So I cannot emphasize enough the benefit of mentors. And it isn't necessarily they're going to answer all your questions, and it's not that they're going to make the journey necessarily easier, but they will be a safe sounding board for what's going on in your head. And you have to be careful who you use as a sounding board. Business is separate from yourself. This is very important. Do not get emotionally attached to your project. If you get emotionally attached to the project, it affects your decision making. Now, the benefit of having a limited company, and I know everybody doesn't start out there, is a limited company is a separate thing. And you, as the CEO or the managing director, you are solely responsible for the well-being of that company. And you're also responsible for everything that goes wrong. I think that's the number one job you have to be mindful of. So when you start out, you have to think about, what do I do next? And I heard the question asked earlier, Sarah, about somebody asked, how do you divide up your time between selling and planning? Well, actually, if you keep selling, you get the time for planning. Because money isn't everything, but it is in business. Success is paper thin. It's called a balance sheet. And they're hard and fast rules that don't change. And as long as you're succeeding in the selling, then you will be able to bring a resource that you actually need. For instance, that was also mentioned. You don't have to be good at everything. In fact, nobody is. But it's more important to recognize the things that are not your strengths and know where you need to be propped up by other people. I also want to say that nobody has ever regretted in life anything they've tried to do. You only regret what you don't try. And the worst thing that can happen is you just might succeed. So it's not mysterious. You don't have to be a certain kind of person, but you have to be resilient and you have to be hopeful. Another question that I'm frequently asked is, from the day you sat down and imagined a business till you built it and sold it, what was different? Well, so far so good, and I always touch wood when I say this because I'm starting out again. The end result was that I built successful businesses. The journey was never fully as imagined. And you have to have that ability when you're in the middle of something and you realize directionally you're going the wrong way, that you say, okay, let's look and change. And actually, when I look back on it, you don't sit, it's not a big moment. It's just a reality moment. It's a bit like driving a car and suddenly making a decision. And all those things are perfectly normal. I am going to do something, and I do not push books, and I know nothing about the authors. But this is a book for anyone who is seriously interested in looking at this. This book is so good, I wish I'd had the ability to write it. It's a third edition, and it is it's called The Beer Mat Entrepreneur, and it's written by Mike Souton, Southon, and Chris West. And it gives really, really basic insight from the very first day you start, and you could literally read it in a couple of hours. Again, thinking about what does it mean for your life if you decide to run your own business? I mean, you mentioned some of the things that I've been so fortunate to do. 2 seasons on Dragon's Den, great fun, absolutely unbelievable fun. the supreme honour of being the Entrepreneurial Ambassador for Northern Ireland. I mean, it's fantastic. I get to talk to people all the time on the start and middle of their journey. And the great thing is I still learn from every single person who never ever stop learning. And actually people who succeed long term are always open to learning.